You know that quiet moment when you sit in your car after turning the engine off, and you don't immediately get out. You just sit there for a second. Maybe longer than you planned. The parking lot is quiet, your phone is still in your hand, and something feels heavy. Not dramatic, not urgent. Just this low-grade pressure that shows up when you check your bank balance or think about next month's bills. At some point, usually when you're not trying to think about money at all, a thought slips in. This car is expensive, not in a flashy way, not in a why did I buy this panic, just expensive in the slow, quiet, monthly sense, the kind of expensive that doesn't hurt all at once but keeps showing up, whether you're excited about the car or not. What's strange is that you don't remember agreeing to this version of the deal. You remember the dealership, the polished floors, the smell, the way the salesperson spoke calmly, confidently, like this was all very normal. They said things like, "This is what most people are paying right now," or "You are well within your budget," or "It's really just about the monthly payment." And at the time, it felt fine. Responsible even. You didn't buy some ridiculous luxury car. You didn't go wild. You just upgraded, or replaced something old, or did what everyone else around you seemed to be doing. And somewhere between that conversation and the first automatic withdrawal from your bank account, you stepped into something you didn't fully understand. My name is Ben, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, psychology, and why capable, intelligent people keep ending up stressed about finances, even when they're doing what they were told was the right thing. And the car payment, that completely normal, socially approved, never questioned car payment, might be one of the most quietly damaging financial traps most people ever fall into. Not because cars are bad, not because financing is always a mistake, but because the system around car buying is designed so you never really see the full cost. You see comfort, you see approval, you see a monthly number that feels manageable. What you don't see is how that decision slowly shapes your entire financial life. Once you notice it, it becomes impossible to ignore. And once you understand how it works, you finally get to decide whether this is something you want to keep repeating. The modern car buying process is not actually about selling you a car. It's about selling you a payment. Everything revolves around that one number. You'll notice it immediately when you walk in. The salesperson doesn't ask what the car costs. They don't ask what the total price should be. They ask what monthly payment you feel comfortable with. That sounds helpful. It feels practical. Life is monthly after all. Rent is monthly. Phones are monthly. Subscriptions are monthly. So you give them a number. Maybe 400, maybe 600, maybe more if you're feeling confident or tired or just ready to be done with the process. And that's when the conversation shifts in a way you don't fully notice. Because once the focus is on the payment instead of the price, the actual cost of the car becomes flexible. Stretch the loan a little. Adjust the interest. Add a year or two. Suddenly, cars that should feel expensive start feeling reasonable. A vehicle that costs $30,000 feels close to one that cost $40,000. A car priced in the low 50s doesn't feel that far off either. The difference becomes a few extra dollars a day, framed as barely anything. Your brain relaxes because the immediate discomfort is gone. What almost nobody tells you is that the longer the loan, the less you feel the real cost of the decision. 5 years becomes 6. 6 becomes 7. And now 7-year loans are not unusual at all. You are committing a large portion of your future income to something that is guaranteed to lose value, and you're doing it because the monthly number feels safe. Dealers love longer loans because they make expensive cars easier to say yes to. Each extra year spreads the pain thinner. It lowers the emotional barrier just enough to keep the deal moving forward. The payment drops, the paperwork looks clean, everyone stays calm. What doesn't stay calm is your future flexibility. Because while you're paying for a car you stopped being excited about a long time ago, that money is locked in. Every single month. No pause button. No adjustment when life gets more expensive. No flexibility when something unexpected comes up. That's when people start feeling what it really means to be car poor. Not broke, not irresponsible. Just stuck. You can pay the bill, but the payment quietly limits everything else. You hesitate before planning a trip. You delay investing. You put off saving. You stay in a job you don't love because quitting feels risky. And you don't blame the car. You blame yourself. You tell yourself you need to budget better or earn more. You assume once you get a raise it will all feel easier. But the payment doesn't care about your raise. It stays exactly the same while everything else in life gets more expensive. Insurance creeps up, maintenance shows up, tires, brakes, registration. Suddenly the car isn't just transportation, it's a constant financial presence that demands attention. Things get even worse when trade-ins enter the picture. This is where many people fall into the deepest part of the trap without realizing it. If you owe more on your current car than it's worth, which is extremely common with long loans, that difference doesn't disappear. It gets added to the next loan. You trade in a car worth $15,000. You owe $19,000. That extra $4,000 gets rolled into the new financing. Your next car starts underwater before you even drive it home. Now you're paying for a vehicle you no longer own, hidden inside the price of a new one. This is how people end up in a cycle where they always have a payment and never build equity. It's not illegal. It's just confusing enough that most people don't fully grasp it in the moment. Confusion keeps deals moving. Clarity slows things down. The reason this system works so well isn't because people are careless. It's because people are human. We are wired to avoid immediate discomfort. We trust authority figures in formal settings. We feel safer doing what everyone else seems to be doing. When someone tells you this payment is normal, your brain relaxes. When you hear you're approved, your brain celebrates. When the difference is framed as a few extra dollars a month, your brain shrugs. And when you drive off the lot, you feel accomplished. That feeling fades quickly. The payment does not. A $600 per month car payment over 6 years adds up to more than $43,000. That same amount invested consistently over time could grow into something meaningful. Real flexibility, real security, real options. Instead, it goes into something that depreciates and eventually needs to be replaced. The real cost of the car payment is not the car itself. It's the future choices you no longer have. Less investing, less saving, less margin when life gets unpredictable. This doesn't mean you should never finance a car. It doesn't mean you have to drive something miserable forever. The solution isn't extreme, it's mental. Stop asking what payment you can afford. Start asking what this decision costs your future freedom. When you think that way, shorter loans start making sense. Cheaper cars feel empowering instead of embarrassing. Paying off a vehicle early feels like winning. Driving something simple starts to feel like leverage. Imagine owning your car outright. No monthly payment. No quiet stress. That extra money doesn't disappear. It stays with you. It builds. It gives you options. The car payment trap only works if you never pause long enough to question it. Now you have. You don't need guilt. You don't need panic. You don't need to sell your car tomorrow. You just need awareness. Because most people don't lose financially from one massive mistake. They lose from dozens of reasonable decisions that slowly box them in. The car payment is one of the biggest boxes. Once you see it clearly, you get to choose differently. Maybe not today, maybe not immediately, but eventually. And that choice, more than income or hustle, is where real financial freedom actually begins. And here's the part most people never stop to think about. The car payment doesn't just affect your bank account. It quietly changes how you see money. It trains your brain to accept a permanent monthly drain as normal. Once that happens, everything else starts stacking on top of it. You don't just have a car payment anymore. You have rent or a mortgage. You have insurance. You have subscriptions. You have streaming services you barely watch. You have a phone payment that somehow never ends. And because the car payment came first, because it was framed as reasonable and unavoidable, every other expense feels smaller by comparison. So when something new shows up, another 100 here, another 50 there, your brain doesn't panic. It shrugs. It has already accepted the idea that a big portion of your income is spoken for before you ever touch it. This is how people with decent income still feel broke. Not because they're irresponsible. Not because they're bad with money. But because too much of their future income has already been promised to past decisions. And the car payment is usually the biggest promise of all. What makes this even more dangerous is how early it starts. For many people, the first real adult financial decision they make is financing a car before investing, before saving seriously, before understanding interest or depreciation or opportunity cost. The car payment becomes the baseline. It becomes the reference point for what normal feels like. So when someone later tells you that you should be investing 15 or 20% of your income, it feels impossible. Not because the math doesn't work, but because your income has already been carved up in a way that leaves no breathing room. The car payment didn't just take money, it took margin. And margin is everything. Margin is what allows you to handle surprises without stress. Margin is what lets you say no to a bad job. Margin is what lets you take risks, invest, or step back when life gets overwhelming. Without margin, every financial decision feels heavy. Every unexpected expense feels personal. Every delay feels like failure. And the most frustrating part is that nobody ever told you the car would do this. They told you about horsepower, about features, about safety ratings, about how good the interior feels. They told you the payment fit your budget. They didn't tell you it would quietly follow you for years, shaping what you could and couldn't do. There's also something else happening here that almost nobody talks about. Car payments normalize debt in a way that makes other bad decisions easier. Once you're comfortable owing tens of thousands for transportation, a few thousand on a credit card doesn't feel that scary. Financing furniture doesn't feel outrageous. Upgrading phones every year doesn't feel reckless. Debt becomes background noise. And when debt becomes background noise, progress slows down without you realizing it. You might still be moving forward on paper. You might get raises. You might earn more each year, but the progress never feels satisfying because it's constantly being absorbed by obligations you can't undo. This is where people start saying things like, "I make more money than I ever have, but somehow I feel more stressed." And they can't quite explain why. The reason is simple. Your lifestyle expanded faster than your freedom. The car payment plays a huge role in that expansion because it arrives early and stays late. Long after the excitement fades, long after the car stops feeling new, long after you stop caring what it looks like, it's still there, asking for the same amount every single month. And then there's inflation. This is where things get really uncomfortable, because your car payment is fixed, but everything else isn't. Groceries get more expensive. Insurance premiums rise. Housing costs climb. Medical expenses show up out of nowhere. Your income might rise too, but rarely at the same pace. And when most of your income is already allocated, inflation doesn't feel like a statistic. It feels like suffocation. This is when people start using credit to fill the gaps, not recklessly, just temporarily. Just to smooth things out. Just until the next paycheck, just until things stabilize, but things rarely stabilize, the car payment becomes the anchor that keeps pulling everything else down, and because it's seen as untouchable, people adjust everything else instead. They save less, they invest less, they delay goals, they postpone peace of mind. They don't see the car as the problem, they see the symptoms. What's even more ironic is that many people justify the payment by telling themselves the car is reliable, or safe, or practical. And those things matter, but there is a huge difference between reliability and excess. You don't need a massive payment to have a reliable car. You don't need the latest model to be safe. You don't need every feature to get from one place to another. But the system makes it feel like you do, because once you're already financing, upgrading feels incremental instead of dramatic. The jump from reasonable to excessive feels small when it's stretched over years. This is how people end up driving cars they never planned to own, paying amounts they never intended to commit to, all while telling themselves it's fine because they can make the payment. Making the payment becomes the goal, not building wealth, not increasing freedom, just keeping everything from falling apart. You stop feeling excited about financial goals because they feel theoretical. You stop believing progress is possible because every extra dollar seems to disappear. You tell yourself you'll focus on it later. Later keeps getting pushed back. Now here's the part that almost feels unfair. The people who escape this cycle are not necessarily smarter or more disciplined. They simply made one different assumption early on. They didn't ask how much car they could afford. They asked how much car they were willing to let control their future. That subtle difference changes everything. Instead of stretching loans, they shorten them. Instead of upgrading, they wait. Instead of rolling negative equity forward, they refuse to carry it at all. Instead of normalizing payments, they eliminate them. And once the payment is gone, something surprising happens. Their financial life opens up faster than they expected. Suddenly saving feels easy. Investing feels possible. Emergencies feel manageable. Choices feel lighter, not because they earn dramatically more, but because they stopped bleeding quietly. There's a moment when you realize that owning your car outright isn't just about money. It's psychological. There is a deep sense of calm that comes from knowing one less thing can't reach into your bank account every month. It's not flashy. No one compliments you on it. No one sees it when you pull into a parking lot, but you feel it. You feel it when an unexpected bill shows up and you don't panic. You feel it when you can say yes to opportunities without doing math in your head. You feel it when you look at your bank balance and realize it's growing instead of resetting. This is why the car payment trap is so powerful. It steals freedom slowly enough that you don't notice until years have passed. By the time most people wake up to it, they're already deep in the cycle. One payment rolled into the next. One upgrade justified by the previous one. One more signature, one more term extension. Breaking out feels overwhelming because it feels like admitting you made a mistake, and most people would rather stay stuck than face that feeling. But here's the truth. Almost everyone has fallen into this trap at some point. The difference is what you do after you realize it. You can keep repeating it because it feels familiar, or you can decide that familiarity isn't the same as safety. You don't have to go backwards. You don't have to punish yourself. You don't have to live without comfort. You just have to stop letting convenience override clarity. Clarity changes behavior naturally. Once you truly see how much the payment costs you over time, it becomes harder to justify stretching it. Once you feel the relief of fewer obligations, it becomes easier to protect that feeling. The system relies on speed, on emotion, on momentum, on the idea that everyone does this, so you should too. The moment you slow down and question it, the spell weakens. This isn't about cars. Cars are tools. This is about how easily we trade long-term freedom for short-term comfort when no one forces us to look at the full picture. The car payment just happens to be one of the most common ways that trade happens. If you're listening to this and thinking about your own situation, the goal isn't shame. The goal is honesty. Honest about what the payment gives you. Honest about what it takes away. Honest about whether it still makes sense. Sometimes the smartest move isn't dramatic.